right. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Very excited. We got the Zendos looking nice. The new Zabutons. It feels a little bit. It's funny how, if you add something to the environment, you can almost, you can adjust the outer world and you can create a different state for the inner world. I was sort of reflecting on that, like, because we've added these cushions, and then we talked about bowing tonight, and we're bowing, and we raise our hands, or raising the Buddhi mind, or raising the Buddha mind, right? So I've been sort of reflecting on what does that mean, right? What does it mean to raise the Buddha mind? Because one way of, anytime we look at a spiritual master around whom a religion has formed, then there's a sense of like, what would Jesus do? Or, I'm going to raise the Buddha, I'm going to be like the Buddha, right? Or, I'm going to follow the teachings of Muhammad and Krishna. It doesn't matter who the, iconic archetypal figure is. There can be a sense of like, I'm going to take myself and I'm going to replace myself with the self of this spiritual person, and then I'll do good things and have good outcomes. And I don't think that's really what that's about, right? Like when we raise the Buddha mind, what we're doing is we're bringing, we're almost like remembering, we're coming back to something within ourselves, right? So if you imagine that in our head, there's all manner of content going on, right? And then when we sit, we're letting that content, like as we breathe, and letting that fall into our hara, right? Just the area 4 inches below our navel, right? And we can literally just let the Buddha mind come up and the content fall away. And that's what practice is. But in order for that to make any sense, you have to say, well, okay, but what is the Buddha mind? Like, what are we even talking about here, right? And so, the nature of the self is that it has no fixed characteristic. The nature of the Buddha mind is that I can't tell you what it is because it's not a fixed thing, right? Everything has Buddha nature. Everything has that quality of being interdependent, interconnected, and beginningless, right? It arises out of an unbroken chain of karma going back forever. And so when we raise that state, we're raising a state of openness, right? We're raising a state that's not fixed, right? We're letting go of our conditioned response to reality, and we're meeting like what's in our reality face to face right now, right? We're letting our preconceptions drop away. And this is something we can do all the time. Like, this is when we say taking refuge in the Buddha, this is what it means. It's so flippin' useful, right? And we find, well, I'll speak for myself. I find new ways all the time to let go of stuff I don't need. You find yourself riding along in the car and you think, you think about the future. You think about your worries. You think about pleasing people. You think about all of these thoughts, and you can let them fall away, and then you can meet. Like, what's weird is like this skillfulness arises. Like, if you let all of the baggage drop away, you don't sit there as a zombie. You're not like, oh, now I'm at peace, right? Like, all of this awareness and attention and skill flows into that space where you can actually be with the people in your life, and you can make decisions about the events in your life, and you can not be dragged along by sort of yesterday's news, your old experiences. So, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, and that's kind of why I'm talking about this, right? It's like, Thanksgiving's hard. It's hard for a lot of people. And it's hard because, our closest loved ones sort of have an all-access pass to our hearts. And so it's very easy for them to sort of push buttons that cause us to be like, to not, the Buddha mind's like, bye, right? I'm like, you always do that thing. immediately. Right? I could just hear it, right? I think it's ironic that the day after Thanksgiving is called Black Friday, right? Which is itself kind of scary sounding. But then also, like that the cultural norm is to like engage in a furious amount of shopping, right? Like, which is a great way to numb. It's retail. They call it retail therapy, right? You're like numbing everything. It's like I can't possibly tolerate being around these loved ones anymore. I have to go like, into a high stimulation environment where I like spend all my money and like focus on, we're immediately rushing on to Christmas, right? I can't. And now, weirdly, apparently we've decided as a society that Christmas starts November 1st. And then everyone's just acting like that's always been the case. And I'm like, I feel like a crazy person. I'm like, that is not the case. Like I worked retail for 6 years and Christmas music didn't start until Black Friday, ever. Like, what are we talking about? But so sort of weaving that into, this Dharma talk, what I'm kind of aiming at here is like, the standard issue problem is that we show up with each other reenacting all of our shared history in negative ways, and then we have to go and hide in a shopping mall or in an online shopping situation or in a Walmart or something because we can't be present. And and maybe no one in this room is doing that. I don't know what your guys' holiday plans are, but I think the pattern is still there, right? The temptation is still there to like, to just not show up. Another common solution is everyone just consumes huge amounts of alcohol for the whole weekend, right? Let's just all go get drunk. And so, what does the Buddha have to teach us about all that, right? You don't have to occupy the seat you always occupied, right? You don't have to play the role in your family system that you have always played. Because you don't have a fixed self. So you aren't that person. So you don't have to do that. You don't have to do it at all. Right? You can, and you don't have to win anything. Right? If your Uncle Bob says something inflammatory, you don't have to win the argument. It's amazing the power of being like, can you pass the salt? Then it has no power over you. So I really want to encourage you all as you head forward over the next week or so. We're raising the Buddha mind. You can do that at any point. You can just go, wait a minute. All of the things that I'm seeing are impermanent. All of the things that I'm seeing have the same nature, right? Which is that empty nature. Right? None of it is fixed. None of it is permanent. It all will fall away. It all will dissolve. It's the nature of our lives, and it's the nature of literally everything in reality, that it will fall away. And so you're sitting there, and whatever you're looking at, it's going to end. It's going to fall away. And so when we raise the Buddha mind, we can raise that awareness of what I'm facing is going to fall away. And I too can fall away, and I don't have to show up with any particular set of reactions or responses. I don't have to convince anyone of anything. I don't have to win anything, right? I can just be present. And then what's weird is often, if we just show up, then all of a sudden we want to be of service. Where before we were full of resentment, now we just want to help, right? It's well, let me get you some turkey. Rah, rah, rah. Political beliefs I disagree with. Right? Okay, well, do you want some more stuffing? That can be our prostration, right? Why don't I go wash the dishes? Why don't I choose to, spend time with folks who are supportive instead of people who are unsupportive? Because that's the thing. The holiday itself has Buddha nature, right? It's not a fixed thing. It doesn't have to have a certain shape. It's amazing, right? You can, one of the things my wife and I decided some years ago, we we did a Thanksgiving where we sat on the couch and we watched Marathon Mystery Science Theater and we ate hamburgers. And it was absolutely wonderful. You know, and we don't do that every year, but it's allowed, right? There's no like holiday hall monitor who's going to come around and be like, you know, you didn't do the thing. You're free. You know, enlightenment is about freedom. You know, you're free to do whatever feels authentic, that creates the least suffering for you and the least suffering to the people around you. You just, there it is, just raise that up. You know, raise it up, right there. There it is. You know, as we raise that up, excess falls away. So I want to send you into next week, right? Because obviously next week we're not meeting, because we meet on Thursdays. So, you know, when you are doing your holiday celebrations, I want you to raise the Bodhi mind, right? Raise the Buddha mind. Allow everything else to fall away. And then find out what happens. Be curious. Like, you know, I know what happens if I get into the same old dysfunctional fight I used to get in for the last 20 years. Let me see what happens if I don't, right? You know, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and you don't have to listen to anything you don't want to hear, and you don't have to be anything you don't want to be. You can just, boop. Okay. That's probably enough.